Good afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of Cooking in Plaid, where all we need is an idea, a sharp knife, and a plaid shirt. And today it looks like we're working on a very simple pizza style frittata. I already got some beef bacon going, and now I'm working the butter around a pan. The beef bacon I have never actually cooked before, but I thought, hey, let's give her a shot. At this point, I'm just working the butter around the pan, making sure she's totally melted for when I throw the mushrooms in there. I also turn the temperature down, seeing that the butter is going a little brown. That means the temperature is a bit too high. We don't want to burn the butter. We just want it to get nice and melty and stay at a golden color. That way the mushrooms are going to absorb all that fat and make them that much more flavorful. So we're just going to go ahead and work these mushrooms around. I find they generally take about 15-20 minutes to fully develop. And with that beef bacon, having never cooked it before, I can tell that it's going to be a little thicker and a little more tough than pork bacon. I'm not going to wait for it to get totally crispy because I don't want to overcook it. And we're going to kind of take it by step and see how it turns out. At this point, we're ready to go ahead and get our eggs together. It's all about personal preference here. I'm going for thin crust, so I'm really just making a binding agent to stick all these vegetables together. If you want to go with a thicker frittata, not a problem. You just use, well, for the same amount of food here, that's going to feed three people. So you would just use a smaller pan with less surface area, and it would give you more volume. So you would end up with a much thicker product at the end. And now we can see that these mushrooms have developed into a really nice, rich brown color. You don't want to wait for them to start browning up. That would suggest that they're starting to get burned. But I do find that once you add that onion in there, and I do a lot of mushroom and onion, but once the onion goes in, that's it. The mushrooms are pretty well done developing, and anything else that you add in there is just going to stop them from continuing to cook through. And those flavors are just going to keep on mixing around. Now mixing that around, I can tell that it's getting a little dry, so I'm going to go ahead and put in some extra virgin olive oil. That's enough, that's really too much oil for what I'm doing here, but once I put in that bacon, when I get that caught up, as well as asparagus, that's going to get put in later, that's really going to have enough oil in there to cover all that food. Now we're ready to go ahead and add the asparagus. I can't stress this enough. Asparagus is delicious. It just is. It's perfect the way it is. But definitely not raw and definitely not overcooked. So this part's so important. I always put it in last and I only want to give it about 10 minutes here. And that way, once it goes into the oven with the whole frittata put together, we're only going to give that about another 15. And it's so challenging to make sure that it doesn't get overcooked in a meal like this, because once it's overcooked, it's blah. But if you can nail it so it's not overcooked, oh, she's deadly. And now I'm at that point with that beef bacon, looking at it. I'm either at that step where it's time to pull it because she's well done, or I keep it on and I let it keep on going until the crispy point. Well, like I said, first time I've ever had it. I don't want it to get totally crispy, so I'm going to pull it now and see how she turns out. So with these eggs, I try to keep them simple. Just a dash of cream in there. Really, I find it just for color. Spices, love my spices. So we're going to be using approximately 50 grams here of garlic powder. This next one that I'm going to be using here is Clubhouse Italiano. Can't go wrong with it. It goes in half of everything I make. It's expensive and worth every penny. And then I got a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mix this up. I have heard time and time again from the real pros that you can overmix eggs just the same way that you can overmix dough, or you can overmix butter and end up turning it into whey. I've never had an experience with that, but it is something I always keep in mind. So anytime I'm mixing this, whether it's a frittata or anything really, I always wait until those flavors are blended and then bam, I stop just to make sure that I don't run into that issue. So I thought I'd go ahead and include this into here, be cutting up the beef bacon. This meal did take me 40 minutes, start to finish, because there was a lot of cutting, so obviously I cut a lot out of the video. But as you can see, anyone that's ever cut bacon before, I mean, you run a knife through it, not a problem. This stuff, yeah, those are really sharp knives that I'm using. So my first one, it would go through if I really pushed it, but whatever. I got the second one there, and that's a really heavy knife that I have. So even with that, hand on the top, keep my fingers out of the way. Don't want to lose any of those guys. I kind of count on them. And just so everyone can see, well, that's about how tough it is to get through beef bacon. And now we got everything together, and it's time to start blending this. If you look and you can see, like the mushroom and onion, you can keep that going forever. But that asparagus, it's bright and it's vibrant, which means like it's still got some pop in there. If I bite into it, there's going to be a slight crunch. That's the best way to tell if whether or not your asparagus is overcooked. I mean, if it's bright, then you're good to go. If she starts getting kind of dull looking, then you know that you're heading in the wrong direction. And like I said before, this is going to be very thin style. So, like that egg, it's really going to be more vegetable than it is egg. So, it's just working to bind all those products together. So, as I'm getting this into the pan's still hot. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flatten it down really, really well and spread it all over. Otherwise, it's going to look exactly like how I poured it into the pan. Now at this point, we're just going to give that pan a shake and see if the edges of that frittata solidified. And now that they have, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put it in the oven at about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And then, once she looks about ready, which looks to be about now, we're going to go ahead, give it another shake, and now we're seeing if the center of it solidified. Oh, look at that. I'm not seeing anything rolling around, no liquid in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my handy dandy heat cover on there so I don't burn myself, as I have on more than several occasions. And then we're going to set the oven to broil, which means that's going to cook from the top down. And then we're going to cover the top with some marble cheese, it looks like I have. Just use whatever you have on hand. Pizza mozzarella always goes best, in my opinion. Then we're going to go ahead, we're going to put her in the oven. Very, very important. Do not walk away. When she's on broil, she broils hard. Then after about a minute and a half, she was ready to come off. I just waited for it to melt. I wasn't wanting it to brown up because I didn't want it to overcook the egg. And we're just going to give it a quick slice, being super gentle because it's hot, so I don't want to pull the cheese off, and make myself a nice little slice of pizza here. Well, that's about it for today, folks. Turned out to be a rather delicious frittata. Even my kid tried a little bit. Well, let me know how turned out for yourself, and if you have any ideas, comments, questions, go ahead and drop me a line. Until next time, keep on cooking.